we're here. I will start over. Thank you for recording, Nadia. Just to start us off with the reason why we're here, the City Council of Santa Barbara and our electoral system is a one and done winner take all election, right? There are no runoff elections, and that kind of has produced some problems. Basically, any races that have more than 2 people in the city tend to produce winners that earn a plurality and not a majority of the folks that vote in these elections, meaning that the person who wins doesn't win with 50% or more of the vote. And that's been true for many of the last few municipal elections for mayor and other city council races that have more than 2 people in them. Just if you look at a breakdown of the Santa Barbara City partisanship, you see that Democrats have a pretty big advantage. They have more than 55,000 registered voters in Santa Barbara, or excuse me, they have 58% of the 55,000 registered voters in the city, with independents being the fastest growing second, and then the GOP in a pretty sad 15% of the city. This is great, except for when we have multiple Dems challenging each other in races or other progressive folks. If you can see here, it kind of dilutes that. And I know that this is not a perfect representation, but if you expect all the Dems to kind of split the vote in an election, as just happened, we end up with someone who doesn't share our values having an opportunity to take power. So that's exactly what just happened in the most recent Santa Barbara City election. We had the progressives, split the vote across 3 people, primarily across 2 people, and end up with somebody who's basically a Republican, although that's not their affiliated party, but based on their voting record, now in charge of the city as mayor. I understand we have a weak mayor system and all that stuff, but we have effectively lost the progressive voting majority on the city council, and for largely no reason. So we want to prevent this in the future to make sure that someone like Randy Rouse, who's anti-renter, anti-union, anti-environment, and pro all these other things that are not in congruence with our values, from taking power with only 38.6% of the vote, right? And if we go back to here, you can see that altogether, more voters did not want Randy Rouse's vision than did in the city. So we have a way to change that, and there are other ways to do elections that don't suck. So I'm going to turn it over to Nadia to talk a little bit about ranked choice. And just let me know when you want me to transition the slide.
Cool, thank you, Christian. Yeah, you can go ahead and switch it right now. So yeah, this is just a summary of what ranked choice voting is as far as I understand it. If there are other people who are more familiar or who understand it differently, I welcome you to post it in the chat or let me know. But essentially, a ranked choice voting system is a system where you get to allocate your vote based on preference. So the number of candidates that are there is the number of votes that you get, and you're allowed to rank them first, second, third, down to 6th, or however many candidates there are. It's also known as an instant runoff election. So if no candidate receives the majority of the vote, so 50% plus 1 votes, after the first round of voting, then you look and you see who is the candidate who received the fewest votes. That person is dropped from the list, and then everyone who put that person first, their votes are reassigned to the person who they chose second. So yeah, and then this process continues until the top candidate does have more than 50% plus 1 votes. So you can go to the next one. And a lot of people have been asking about who who already uses ranked choice voting or where is it already implemented. So as far as I could tell from different sources, there are 15 states that have some form of ranked choice voting as of this year, and that includes federal, local, state, and everything in between. So, and in California, there are 7 cities, including Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco, Eureka, and Palm Desert, I believe, that all have some form of ranked choice voting as well. And a lot of these cities it'll be implemented for the first time next year. So it is definitely sort of a newish thing that people are looking at and paying attention to, and that voters are asking for and voting for. And the city of Santa Barbara would be the first jurisdiction on the Central Coast, I guess, depending on how you define the Central Coast, to implement ranked choice voting. So yeah, and this would we're just talking about the city of Santa Barbara, not the county or the state or anything like that at this point. Next slide. Yeah, so these are the pros and cons that I have heard from talking to people and from looking online. And I welcome additional pros and cons. Maybe we can come off mute in a second, but I think that the pros are that it allows voters to support like-minded competitors to defeat an unfavored candidate. So basically that means that yeah, the vote wouldn't get split between progressive people. If majority of people want a progressive candidate, that would be the person who wins. Ideally, I guess maybe someone can point out an example where that is not the case. And yeah, it also allows people to cast their first vote for the person they really want to vote for, and then put their second choice for a more safer candidate or something like that, which allows people to really vote for who they want to, instead of feeling the need to be strategic with their vote, which to me, that's a really important aspect of this. And then it also allows people to, say a more progressive candidate wants to run, but they don't want to challenge an incumbent who is sort of progressive. This allows them to potentially run without worrying about splitting the vote. And then the cons, of course, the main con that I have seen is that opponents say that ranked choice voting is very confusing to voters, and we don't want to put any more barriers on people voting, which I think is legitimate, but also will be remedied with just enough time. People do also say that it's costly to administer, and this would especially be true in the Central Coast because nobody else does it here. So we would have to probably outsource it to LA or somewhere else. But the city is now on even year elections, so they're already saving some money from that switch in election proceedings, as far as I understand it. And then some also say they prefer a standard runoff election or a primary election for different reasons. They think it's a better way for people to campaign, and they think it gives voters sort of a better chance to vote for who they want to than ranked choice voting. So yeah, I see Brett has their hand raised, and if other people have things to say, now is the time. Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I just wanted to add what I see as another pro for ranked choice voting. I think it leads to much more positive campaigns and a lot less of the negative campaigning. A candidate can say something like, vote for me, and Bob over here or Shelley is also a really good candidate, so that might be your second choice, but vote for me first. It leads to coalitions that are similarly aligned, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like people also are inclined to get you to put them second. So even if you know that if someone else you would see as a lost cause, they're not going to put you first, you're still inclined to get them to rank you in some spot. So I think it does lead to more like widespread campaigning in some cases. And Hal.
Could you please go over the process of counting the votes once the votes have been cast? You talked about votes moving up from the candidate with the fewest Does that continue to go up the line from there? How does that work?
Yeah, so if there's 5 candidates, and nobody has a majority on the first round, just looking at the first choice votes that everyone has placed, then you would look at the 5 candidates and you would say, okay, this person has the lowest, has the least amount of votes, so they're eliminated. And then you're going to look and see, okay, all these people put somebody else second, so now their votes are allocated to that person. And it continues until one candidate has a true majority. I don't know if someone else can explain it better than that, but
I've actually been in the situation of counting the ballots like that. It was called the hair system of counting. And so I know it pretty intimately from the logistics of it. And fortunately, people don't have to quite understand that to know how to do their ranking. But yeah, basically it's like a series of runoffs. You know, each time you're saying, well, if these were the only candidates, who would beat whom, and then if not the 50% doesn't show up in that round, then you just keep doing the same thing until it literally is at the last stage would be 2 candidates left, and it would be literal runoff. But usually it happens around the second round that the preferred candidate is identified.
yeah, and some other people have asked how it affects like election times, you know, like when do you know the answer? And there's not a ton of studies on that because it hasn't, it's not been implemented extremely widely yet. But if on that first round, there is a clear winner, then it's the same day, you know, it's like any other election. And then typically what I've been seeing is like 2 weeks, you know, the answer. That's how it was in New York with their mayoral race. So yeah, not too much longer than a typical election. And I see Lee and Spencer. I'm not sure who was first.
Let Spencer go first. I'll come after him.
Okay.
Thanks, Lee. I just wanted to add one thing, because I think that when I first heard about ranked choice voting, my impression was that because everyone is asked to rank people, everyone's first and second choices and on down are counted. But I just wanted to point out that it's only the people who voted for the candidates that got last and then working their way up that have their second place votes counted. So if you voted for the person who ultimately end up getting second or third place or whatever, your second vote won't be counted. So I just want to throw that out there.
You ready for me?
I think, was that you, Lee?
Well, yeah, that's me unmuting.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be visible, and I'll figure out how to lower my hand. So a couple of things. Just to point out, historically, the plurality system we had in the city worked against us this time, but it actually worked in our favor in 2017. So Kathy won with less of a plurality than Randy won this time because the other candidates were more conservative or moderate to conservative. So it can be a crapshoot that way. It sort of depends on who else is in the race, right? And then I wanted to raise an issue that we dealt with. So when I lived in New Zealand, we were trying to work on getting our county, as it were, to go to ranked choice voting because the district health boards were already there. But one of the issues that people were bringing up is the fact that if you have multiple races on a ballot, and some are straightforward, what they call first past the post, right? Whoever gets the most votes win. And then another race is ranked choice voting. That is a lot of where the voter confusion is likely to be. If the city were still just running its own elections, which is not going to happen anymore, thank you, God, that would be different. But now we have an issue where there's going to be a board of supervisors race, there's going to be an assembly race, there's going to be a congressional race. And if all of them look one way and the city race looks different, and if it's 2024, there will also be a state Senate race. So I think one of the questions to ask is that a lot for voters to figure out, is whether or not they can vote 2 different ways on a single ballot. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, that would be something to overcome, certainly. George, and then Marilyn.
I'm certainly not here to talk against ranked choice voting, but I want to provide two items that might be useful. And I'm not disagreeing with anything anybody has said so far. I'll do the least controversial thing first, which is that there's tremendous value to primaries because I'm going to cite two instances that bring it home graphically. I would say that having primaries is very useful to counter the tendency to elect and re-elect incumbents. For those of us who want to encourage new candidates and change, primaries give that possibility. When Gail Marshall first ran, she ran against Willie Chamberlain and a person named Karen, who was very much like Willie. And as you know, supervisors have to get 50% plus one and it's over. Willie got 49.5, only because Karen was in the race getting 1,000 votes. Did Gail Marshall survive? Gail Marshall was a non-politician. She'd never run before. And so she needed time, not only to get the apparatus together, but to get people to know her. And the primary created that time. Getting rid of that would be a shame. That was repeated in the Susan Rose election that followed. Susan Rose was up against an incumbent, Jean Graffey. Gil Garcia also ran. The vote was split. So the two people who went on to the election were Susan Rose and Jean Graffey. Well, Jean Graffey had been well known and established here. Susan Rose was a newcomer who had been a planning commissioner in Ventura. She needed time for people to know her positions. So I want to make sure, depending on the circumstances, and that we don't throw out the primary with the bathwater or something like that. More controversial, what I'm about to say will repel a lot of people. I'm going to say it anyway. I believe in having strong parties, Democratic Party and Republican Party. One of the functions they do is if they do it right, and they don't always do it right, they help identify people and their positions and see what their values are. And then they give that endorsement. And a lot of people need that because they don't have time to study the issues and go to the forums, things like that. They're basically counting on their party to do that. And so you may not like that. Some people think that that entrenches people, but there's still a lot of value to parties. Said differently, look at the countries that have multitudes of parties, and do they really do better than we do? So whether you believe in a two-party system or three-party system, I think that there is value to parties, even though, as Lee pointed out, doesn't always work out that way. And maybe that's the answer also, that having strong parties doesn't mean that other people can't run. But still, we have to think carefully about fixing one thing and breaking another. Those are my comments.
Thanks, George. Marilyn, and then I think we'll keep going with the presentation.
Yeah. In many ways, I was going to hold it for later, but Lee brought up exactly the issue that I was planning to sort of throw into the hopper, and that is that we have to think about this in the context of what our elections will be like, not once we move into the regular election cycle. And if it was a matter of rank or choice voting versus a two-stage vote of elect a primary and a runoff, there's no way that rank order wouldn't be better than a costly two-stage election. But with the way we are now going, we will be in a situation where there will be a primary every year, I assume. And so it is possible to have a two-stage primary and runoff election system that that wouldn't be standalone. It would be just part of the election cycle where you have primaries and you could have a nonpartisan primary for city elections. And it's also possible to have the rank order be done at the primary level. And in fact, I think that this is what's being promoted by Yang. as because a lot of the decision making and including in a two-party system like ours, a lot of those big decisions are made at the primary level, and that's often, you know, a winner take all, but that can also be a ranked choice. So I just wanted to, again, to second the idea that we should consider whether being the only ranked choice voting in a large election system would work as well, given that the primary is an option. And I'm all for ranked choice voting. So.
Yeah, thank you. And this is the reason we're having this meeting, right? Is to just understand where everyone is at. And yeah, and decide where to go from here and what is going to have the most support going forward, you know? So yeah, I appreciate everyone's responses. And now Christian will tell us how logistically we go about changing the election system for whichever way we decide to do that. So go ahead.
Thanks. Can everybody see the presentation again? Okay,
Yes.
so here's the plan. In order to get ranked choice or some kind of electoral reform, as other folks have mentioned, we basically have to change the city charter of the city of Santa Barbara. And that can be done by charter amendment. And there are two pathways to getting that done. So number one, and the much easier way to get this done is to have a majority of city council vote to put a charter amendment on the ballot. Either way, it has to go to the voters, right? A charter amendment requires a vote of the people. And I'm sure you're all familiar with voting for various measures at the municipal level over the last few years, like Measure C, Measure B, which put us in even year elections, which was a great electoral reform done by ballot measure recently. But we tend to not see this from city council members, and we're not super confident that city council, after Nadia approached them with preliminary conversations, would be open to putting this on the ballot for a number of different reasons, right? Incumbents tend to not like change, right? Because they got elected the other way, and that seems to suit them just fine. So we don't anticipate that this would be a popular or urgent initiative for the existing city council, but that's not necessarily true. That could not be the case if we lobby city council, but the other way to get this done is by ballot petition. So the California election code allows for 15% of registered voters in a city to petition to get a charter amendment on the ballot. We're basically proposing 4 steps to get that done, because either way, the only way to get city council to act is to start getting organized, right? So this group and the turnout here and the energy behind this issue, because of the most recent municipal election, we feel now is the right time to do an initiative like this, a ballot petition initiative. And so here are the 4 steps. Number 1, we need a charter amendment and to draft that up. So we have actually, Jonathan has drafted a charter amendment based on, what is it, Oakland or Berkeley? I think it's Oakland, on their draft charter amendment. So we have the basic outlines of this for Santa Barbara already. We probably just need some kind of legal review to make sure that it's legal, that it's appropriate, and that it would pass muster for people to get on board and sign. Then we need to file a petition with, yes, Jonathan is not a lawyer. So we need to file a petition with the city clerk. So basically, the election code requires us to file the finalized charter amendment with the city clerk. And also we need to give notice of intent to circulate. So once we get past the drafting stage, we need to have it ready to go to submit and start gathering petition signatures. And then the next step would be to actually start organizing the petition signatures. And this is the biggest lift of this initiative. We would need to get about 8,300 signatures from Santa Barbara voters based on the current registered voters of the city, which again is about 55,000. 15% of 55,000 is about 8,300 signatures. So that's a big lift, right? Nadia penciled this out. That's like 40 signatures a day or something like that for every day until the deadline to do this. And so we would need organization. We would probably need professional campaign staff to manage the gathering of these signatures, and we would need a lot of volunteer labor or paid labor. But after we get it on the ballot, then it's just about making sure that voters approve it, right? So we get it to the ballot, and that is also a challenge, right? Because we would need, there's folks that are maybe not sold on ranked choice, or maybe they're not sold on a primary, or whatever the electoral reform we choose to go forward with. And we need folks to get on board. We also need to anticipate any opposition to folks that don't want the status quo to change, and that might raise money to get people to vote no. So then it would take organized effort and coalition building to actually get voters to approve it if we get it on the ballot. And so those are the 4 steps. I want to open it up really quick just to any feedback on these, or I know we have some seasoned professionals on the call, like Mary Rose. Did we miss anything here in this strategy, or did we nail it all?
You want my comments?
Heck yeah, I want your comments.
I think that well, it's 8,300 valid signatures, and you need to have a good size cushion over that. So just plan that. You have maximum of 180 days to collect those signatures. And then you have to build and work backwards from when you have to turn them in. Because the elections office has to have time to review those signatures. So a lot of it's the timing and working backwards from election day. You get 180 calendar days, they get 30 plus working days. And so depending upon your timeline, and then that could go to 90 working days, depending upon the margin that you get in your first count. I think the signature gathering is a big part, but I caution that it's not just getting it on the ballot, it's actually getting the votes out for the election. And that's where a lot of initiatives fall down. They spend all of their energy getting the petitions and then expect somebody else to carry the ball forward. And you have to plan that from the beginning. If you're going to be successful, you have to plan from the beginning how you're going to not only get your signatures, but building your coalition, your third-party endorsers, and how you're going to actually win. So that would be my comment. But you have all the basic steps there. Yeah, get it legal, get it filed. Oh, there's timelines and all of that. So then gather the petitions and build in the time to make sure that they're checked. And then you also have to know that you're going to win. And before you really petition and file, I think you need to have it vetted and know that you're going to have those endorsements from opinion leaders within your community. And until you kind of have that and can answer those questions. So that's my comments and sort of what I filled in Nadia the other day.
Thank you, Mary. Go ahead, George.
A question for Mary, unless somebody else knows, signature gatherers, since we're talking about the city of Santa Barbara, do you have to allege that you're a resident, or can signature gatherers be from Nolita, Goleta, Carpinteria? Let's start there.
You do not have to be a resident, nor do you have to be a registered voter, but I believe California, you still have to be over 18.
Okay.
But you do not have to be a resident of the city. You don't have to be a registered voter. The sponsors, which are I think an initiative for a charter amendment, you only need 3 sponsors. Okay, thanks. It's either 3 or 10, depending on which part of the code you're in.
Okay,
They
so-
do have to be electors in the city.
Okay, so then the other thing I just mentioned, which is probably well known, is that if you have enough financing for this, gathering signatures becomes easier because there are paid signature gatherers. And I'll leave it at that.
I will also say that the signature gathering cost has gone up exponentially during COVID.
Right, no doubt, no doubt. But I just wanted to mention that, that's because that 120-day thing is, that Mary mentioned, is really important. And once it starts, I can tell you when the city of Goleta did it, we were scrambling at the end. And one other tip is we were verifying signatures as they came in.
Thanks,
Okay.
George. And I think Lee has their hand raised.
Thank you. Sorry, I keep being invisible, but I'm like
That's
folding
okay.
laundry. I figured you all didn't want to watch me folding laundry. I guess I would, I mean, having been involved with multiple ballot initiatives, the signature gathering is not that hard if you have strong support. I mean, if you got enough people mobilized behind electoral reform, and I'm not going to say which yet, because, you know, we're talking about multiple approaches to electoral reform, it can be done. And one of the advantages of something like a city is, it's like Santa Barbara, it's pretty compact. You know, places like the farmers markets can be great places to harvest signatures, Trader Joe's, whatever. I would agree with Mary that getting people to vote for it is trickier. And part of the problem with 2022 is there's no city council election in 2022. Now, that doesn't mean people won't be voting, right? They'll be voting for, but they won't they may be voting for a county supervisor depending on where they live. So the city of Santa Barbara is split. They'll be voting in a congressional race. I think we have a senatorial race, not state senator, but, you know, federal. We don't have a presidential. So the year you do it in matters in terms of voter turnout and your ability to focus people and vote on something like this. So, and the example I'm going to give is Measure P, which was an anti-fracking measure. So it was going to have a whole different base of opposition, but it did. And because the ballot qualifiers chose to do it in an off year in 2014 rather than 2016, that pretty much killed it. So the downside of waiting till 2024 is we wait till 2024. The upside is you're going to have much more turnout in a presidential year where there are already also city council elections, but not a mayoral election, right? Which is where the plurality issue tends to come in. So it might be worth considering not just what we're doing, but when we're doing it.
Yeah, thank you. Spencer.
I will add on to that. And I put this in the chat. I'm pretty sure that to do a charter amendment for the city, you have to do it during a city general election. So that would be 2024, which is the closest time that it could be voted on.
Are you sure about that?
Mary, I know you have experience with this. I'm pretty sure you have to amend the charter during a citywide election.
You can do it at a citywide or a general election. You cannot do it at a primary, is what I believe the code was amended to, because they were trying to make sure you had the most opportunity for your voters to come out.
Right. So that would
So
be
it would be a November, it has to, I believe, and I'm flipping through my election code right now to double check that. But I believe that you could do it on a November of 2022 because that is a statewide general election. Yep, Nadia has it. It's in the code to amend a charter.
to amend a city charter.
To amend a city charter, yes.
Got it. Okay. Well, good to know. I'll say I've seen ranked choice voting in my work just as a student at UCSB, because that's how the Associated Students elections work. So I've seen a lot of benefits to it, and appreciated like the matrix about the pros and the cons, because I think, you know, my goal coming into this is increasing voter participation and making sure that we can elect the most progressive leaders that we can in our city. I would say one thing that has concerned me is just the impression that some have that it would create more barriers to voting and make it more confusing for people. And I didn't know if that was something that was just a talking point or if it was actually borne out in the data. And so I pulled up the data. I found a study that mentions that, in a normal election, you see around 2 to 3% of all the ballots that are spoiled because they were marked incorrectly, or maybe there was a signature mismatch. But in the ranked choice voting elections that this looked at, the number of ballots that aren't counted ends up being around 10 or 11%. And so that kind of makes me want to take a step back and think a little bit more. But I like the approach of doing an initiative that doesn't force us to pick between doing a primary or ranked choice or primary and ranked choice, and just sort of have it be inclusive of both, and maybe either leave it up to the council to decide. I don't know if it's that or if there's something else, because I think that'll help us build the coalition to pass something like this.
I assume that in order to do a petition, we would have to decide that we couldn't change the city charter to say some other form of election. There would have to be a specific, Christian, would that be, your assumption that the amendment, the proposed amendment would have to take a stand on what form the change would be?
Technically, actually, the amendment doesn't have to take a hard stance. What Oakland did, and I copied Oakland almost word for word. Thankfully, that's not copyrighted. But we copied Oakland's, and what it says is ranked choice voting will be implemented at a future date. And until it can be implemented in a reasonable way that works, we default to a primary. So it kind of is both, where it starts off as a primary, I guess, and then if ranked choice voting can be implemented, then they implement it and it moves to that. That's how it's written now. That's how Oakland did it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, generally speaking, like, my preference would be for city council to do this. I think that this is extremely popular, and it would save us a whole hell of a lot of trouble raising money, gathering signatures and all of that stuff to just have our elected leaders lead on this issue. I think that, like, it is largely a bipartisan, whatever that means in the city of Santa Barbara, which is mostly Democrats, but largely a bipartisan issue to not have the current system. And there's a lot of criticism for both the incumbent mayor and the incoming mayor on not having a mandate. So there's a lot of, like, benefits to an initiative like this, or any kind of electoral reform. And quite frankly, like, I don't really care about the model as much as I care about changing the current system. And obviously we need to be, like, prescriptive, but I personally, like, I will knock doors for any type of electoral reform that can get support. Personally, and I haven't seen any data on this, but I think that, like, ranked choice is a pretty popular proposition that more people are familiar with because of the 2016 result and conversations that have been ongoing since then. Obviously, like, a lot of states and municipalities have adopted it since 2016. So I think ranked choice would be easier to sell than a primary, but I would be happy for both. Or either or. So maybe we take another comment, and then we have to sort of divvy up some responsibilities. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I posted in the chat in response to what Spencer said about the spoiled ballots, I found a rebuttal. I haven't actually read any of this information yet, but anyway, there's an opposing point of view, so I posted it.
Thanks, Fred. I'm starting to read it right now, trying to process it on the fly, but thanks for posting.
Yeah, and it also would depend a lot on how ballots are counted, because you can be more flexible. I mean, sometimes ballots are thrown out because they don't rank and they only, mark one person. But if you allowed for that, so that a person could have, in effect, just express their first choice ranking, then you don't lose as many people. So it depends on how strict you make the criterion.
Yeah, it's perfectly valid if you only vote for your first choice. There's
Yeah,
no
but-
requirement to rank more.
Yeah, exactly, usually. But sometimes if you just bubble your first choice instead of writing down the number one, it turns out that doesn't, that gets thrown out. But again, as I said, so it's really just a matter of the criterion.
Yeah, I think, well, I don't know how Santa Barbara designs its ballots, but usually you'd have to fill in the appropriate bubble that says, this candidate is number one. I don't know if we have bubble ballots in Santa Barbara. I haven't voted in this county yet.
Okay, well, I think and you'll have an opportunity to give feedback later too, but I think that we wanted to just do some administrative stuff as well and make assignments. We have a pretty broad coalition of people represented here that are interested in the topic, or at least in affecting this change at the city. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan for this next portion, but I'll just introduce it as, if ifs and buts were fruits and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas, or I don't know what they say that, but like we got to put some skin in the game here if we want this change. And I think that, the ideal outcome would be to pressure city council to just act and do the right thing and put forward a ballot proposal themselves. And the only way I can see getting them to do that, especially considering that we have a bunch of people with 5-year terms now, would be to put this pressure, to apply pressure to do a coordinated campaign of signature gathering. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, yeah, I got the hard part, the asks. I'm sure everybody will volunteer and it'll be easy. So this is just a rough framework of just some things we might need to do. I think the main focus is who's interested in, going after this a little more and taking on a little more leadership role in the steering committee. We need to investigate this more, build some more support before moving forward. So this is maybe where a lot of the work is. Is there anyone here who's interested in doing that legwork and support of talking to organizations and starting to get the buy-in? Because like Mary said, it's a valid point. We would need to go in with support. We don't want to do this in a vacuum. So we got Marcy, that's one. I'm gonna write it in so everyone will see as we go. All right, is anyone else interested in this topic enough? Lee is interested. Thank you, Lee, for signing up.
Jonathan, I'd be happy to join.
Wow, this is way easier. I thought it was gonna be hard. It's all good. Spencer is wanting to sign up. Anyone else who's interested? This doesn't mean you're not involved. Just you want to be more involved and building support for this. I'm seeing Marilyn, your hands up. And I can't see everyone's hands up right now, so the chat is easier, or even unmute yourself and speak up and all. Can we take a straw vote on if people are really ready to push? Oh, that's actually a really that's a good idea. Let's do a temperature check right now. Let's maybe just finish up this steering committee where people might be showing interest for this, and then we'll move to that right after. That's a good idea. Thank you, Susan. Is there anybody else who has interest in working more on this? Want to show that? No. I can help Jordan. All right, so we'll it's not closed, but let's pause there and let's do a quick straw poll. Christian, can you stop the share screen real quick? Okay, so we can raise our hands here on this. So let's just do it. So we said, who here is interested based on everything, the pros and the cons and the discussion and the challenges and opportunities we have, who here would like to push for ranked choice just to vote? You're not signing up for anything, don't worry, but who here would like to maybe push for this? You can raise your hand on Zoom. Okay, I need to do a count. Well, that looks like a majority to me, but hard to count. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 10. That's 11 people raising their hands. That's pretty interested. And who's maybe more interested in a primary? Well, okay, let's put our hands down. Sorry. Let's put our hands down.
Some people just did like a thumbs up, and that only stays for a few seconds.
I thought I caught the thumbs up though, but I will just add one. It'll be like 12. We have 23 people here. Okay, so the hands that are up now, these are primary hands, right?
Jonathan, I raised my hand for both because I can't.
That's fine. Oh yeah.
I want to hear from a more diverse group of people.
We can rank them.
Yeah, I like that.
You can vote for 2. So we've got something like 9 people also interested. So, pretty good mix of people who are interested in a reform. And Linda's so it's not a hard vote, we're not declaring a winner, but it looks like we have a good mix of people, and it seems like a mix on this committee of some people who see different opportunities of where we can go. So Marcy says she's not clear on the difference. Well, I mean, it actually could also be no difference in a way. You could do ranked choice primary to general, or you could do a primary and then a general, or only ranked in the general. I guess that's something to tease out. That's what we're going to make these steering committee people do. They'll work on that and see what can build support. So thank you, Mary. Got to go. Yeah, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday. I think a lot of us might be. Oh, okay. Good question, Brett. Is anybody here strongly opposed to this? Maybe you can just speak up, or you don't need to raise your hand.
Everybody lower their hands. Yeah.
Yeah. Lee is hesitant.
Yeah, I'm going through and lowering.
Thank you.
So re-raise it if that's how you feel.
Oh.
Marilyn? Or no? Okay. Lee.
So this is the opposed, strongly opposed, even hesitant, concerned.
Yeah, I'm not raising my hand to speak. I'm just responding to Jonathan's poll.
Oh, yeah. Cool. So we've got Lee raised her hand, and I know Spencer put in the chat as well. So, all right. Well, we always good to have healthy concern and hesitancy, because for a big change, we want to make sure it goes right, not just any change, good change. All right. So I think we can. Is there anyone who's interested in more than just the steering committee? I know maybe we might not even be there yet. We might have to have another meeting of this group at the top of January, and maybe that's when people can get more involved. But if anyone else is like a nerd for writing government code, you can join me on that. You can raise your hand or put in the chat if you're interested in like researching how other people write it, and what can be done. So is that Brett? I'll add you to that. We'll work on that, Brett.
Yeah, interested in helping with that. I definitely don't want to be the main person though.
Don't worry, I won't be either, but someone's got to start the draft, and then we'll pass it off to the experts. And then and Lee's like to join. And then if anyone's interested, a little more down the line, talking like just a month and a half down the line, petition, organizing, and fundraising. And maybe these are all just we don't maybe need all these roles figured out now, but if anyone's interested specifically in finding volunteers or finding us funds to make this happen, you can let us know right now.
Christian, can you share the slide again?
Oh yeah, I forgot that's
Or I can do it if you
cool.
don't. Okay, cool.
Marcy could help with that as well. Awesome. writing a piece for the Independent, that's definitely part of this. Okay. Well, there's always a sign up. Well, one of the next things is, can you go to the next slide, Christian? Great. Well, thank you. Wait, actually go back one more to the sign up. Yes, it's just great. You know, we had a good number of people sign up already to, you know, go get more involved. So thank you all for doing that. Just wanted to recognize everyone who did sign up. So, and just seeing in the chat, I did want to respond. Fairvote.org is a great organization. I know a few people on their board. They do good work. So I would recommend them. But next slide, please. Financial commitment, you know, nothing's free, sadly, and we doing a campaign like this will require resources, whether that's direct finances or resource from, you know, if someone has an office staff to assign to it. So this is something to think about. Like, there's no direct ask being made if no one's asking you to write a check today, but there will be asks of that, and there'll be money will need to be raised. And resources will need to be used to get out the vote, to, you know, places to meet, to count signatures, you know, all these kinds of things will be a major part of this effort, whether it's now or in the future, or whatever the direction we go in. So just want to put that on people's radar. And if you represent an organization and who might be interested in this, definitely something to consider. And then next slide, we're going to wrap this up, get you all to dinner and off to your weekend.
Well, hold on one second too. I want to kick off the financial commitment question really quick, just because the Santa Barbara Progressive Coalition has about $1,500 in our bank account. I don't know if we would because you can all be like part of the Progressive Coalition decision making. So if you show up to the meeting, it's like democratic. So we all vote at every meeting on how to use the funds. And so if you'd like to direct some of those funds or all of them towards this effort, I would love to get all of the money spent so that I can get the bank account out of my name. But yeah, that's there, and I think that's a good starting point if folks are interested in spending the coalition money that way.
I, as a former coordinating member, I totally support that. So thank you, Christian, for putting that out there. So we've got 1,500 to start from. That's not nothing, but we need a lot more than that. So, but we've got to match. Everyone can match the Progressive Coalition. So let's try to think about a next meeting. You know, I think our group was thinking, well, we have a steering committee now moving forward, so they can help plan that. But first week of January, similar timing probably, or a little later, depending on what could work. But does that seem to fit people? We can make another meeting at the top of January. I don't know if we want to schedule that right now, but you know,
I want to make a suggestion after Lee.
Yes, go ahead, Lee.
I just had a question. Who is who's running the steering committee? Because somebody needs to be the border collie, or, you know, somebody has to be the person who puts out the doodles and launches the Zoom, all that stuff.
Well, thankfully, we have an excellent staff member at SBCAN, Nadia, who's really interested in this, and our board voted to, you know, work on exploring this issue further. Not endorsing anything yet, just to keep exploring. So we're in that stage, and Nadia will herd the cats and keep it going.
Yes.
Thank you, Nadia. I just as far as the next meeting, so the Progressive Coalition is not particularly organized or working on an initiative right now. I think that this is a great initiative to kind of organize around and to also recruit more folks onto the planning committee for Progressive Coalition. We're having some succession conversations right now about planning that for leadership. And so I think it would be a great opportunity to kind of plug Progressive Coalition in and use this as a recruiting tool, right? We have a large mailing list. We have a large Facebook group to use at our disposal, or to in concert with SBCAN. So my recommendation would be for this meeting to be on the second Thursday of January, which is when the Progressive Coalition has their regular meeting, which would be, let me see,
13th.
the 13th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, that gives us breathing room to get started, but we'll get started hard. You know, we'll go extra fast starting that day, and that's the 13th at 6 o'clock. I'm putting it in my calendar right now.
Yeah, SBCAN typically has our North County roundtables on the second Thursday at 5:30, I think. So we will have to see if that if something's already been scheduled for that or not.
Well, Santa Barbara Progressive Coalition has been doing that, but we can change the meeting date. I think that people, like, we can be flexible to not conflict with SBCAN. So, like, is there another date?
Let's maybe look to the Wednesday, or we could punt this off to, we'll get an email later with a save the date once.
Why don't you do a doodle for
Yeah.
your steering committee?
But yeah, let's make it for that week. I think that's
That
a.
week.
a
Yeah, I
good
think that
week
week,
for-
aiming for that week is good for us.
Doodle for
Yeah.
that week.
So week of the 10th, put it in your minds. You'll be getting a doodle and a calendar invite for that day or one of those days in the evening. So it's going to be an evening meeting, and yeah, so that's when we'll get back on track for this, and we'll do, our committee and folks will do some intermediary work on building support for us.
Cool.
All right. Well, happy Friday, everybody. Hope that you have a good weekend. I want to give
Thanks,
Kristen
everybody.
a chance to say anything else before we close.
The 13th.
Yeah, I'll
Oh,
just
and
say, oh, go
I
ahead.
just- I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you all have done, Nadja and Jonathan and Christian.
Thank you, Lee.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank
And yeah,
you.
thank you everyone for showing up, and I will be in touch with those who said they are interested in the steering committee, and I think we'll meet before that date in January if possible. And we will, yeah, we'll figure out what direction we're going, you know, and then we'll be reporting back to you in January if all goes well. And yeah, if there's someone else who's interested who wants to see the recording of this, let me know. I'll send it to them and keep them in the loop.
Hey, Nadia, can you stay on for like 2 minutes?
Sure.
I have a question. I'm wondering if there's an interest, especially for, I think it was Lee and Spencer that were hesitant, whether there's interest in having another follow-up to just talk more about the issues and see if, see if we can get a consensus that we all want this, or what we all want.
Yeah.
I would say that we need more input from the community before we get to a consensus. We're a fairly small group. And I would not be comfortable with just making a decision one way or another without getting input from more key people who also were likely to be very involved in helping us move it forward. And that does include the electeds, who, you can talk about pressuring them, but they're also participants in policymaking, and they're also pretty savvy, some of them more than others. And so I think that we should have some conversations outside this circle rather than thinking that this is the circle that should make that final determination.
Not pressure, incentivizing.
Well,
Partnership,
pressure was the
collaborate.
word that one of you used. I don't remember if it was you, Christian, or if it was Jonathan, but somebody used that term, and I work too closely with electeds not to respect our local electeds, at least, to have some pretty good insights and understanding. And also a broader community of progressives, a broader community of election activists. So I wouldn't want to narrow the decision-making down to just the steering committee or even just this group without more input.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good point.
That's good. I just also want to say, Brett, thank you for posting that article for me to read. I'm going to put my email in the chat for everyone if people want to continue the conversation that way. And just going to research a little bit more, because I agree with what Leah to say about bringing more people in and trying to broaden the conversation And also, I want to see how it impacts outcomes. I'll be honest. I want us to have the most progressive outcome that we can. And so, yeah.
Right. Thank you all again. We'll wrap this up and we'll get back to you soon. Bye.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.